Ragtag Studio is a creative agency founded in 2024 based in Colorado Springs, Colorado, here in the United States. The creative at the agency is led by Jack Hebert, a 27-year-old creative director who has led this startup agency to work with clients such as Altra Running, the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and Underline. It's very rare to find an agency that has seen this much success in its first year of operation, and it's even more rare when that agency is led by someone under 30 years old. I had the privilege of interviewing Jack. You're going to hear us talk about how Ragtag came to be, the importance of relationship building as an agency owner, and Jack's vision for the future, not just for Ragtag, but for the creative industry as a whole. But before we get into it, be sure to give this episode a like, leave a comment, and of course, subscribe. This is Ziggy the Designer, the show where we talk about the world of graphic design and the people that make it move. I'm here with Jack Hebert, co-founder and creative director of Ragtag Studios out in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Thank you for being here, Jack. How's it going? How are you doing, man?
Oh, I got some coffee in the mug. It's going great. Happy to be here. Happy to be chatting with an old friend from college. And yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. Let's get into it. So my first question. So your studio Ragtag is about to hit its 1-year anniversary. Congratulations, by the way. Can you tell us, what was the moment that pushed you to start Ragtag?
Yeah, so Ragtag was kind of formed out of a really unexpected season in my life. I was working as a creative director for another agency in Colorado Springs. And that agency kind of took a pretty significant organizational shift towards political consulting, which I had zero interest in doing. And so I had a lot of serious conversations with the owner of that agency. And his kind of advice for, I guess lack of a better term was, you can do this thing on your own. If you don't want to, follow the road that we're paving this way, why don't you keep going here? You're excited and motivated. And so I called up one of my really good friends who had been kind of a sounding board for me while I'd been working in my role at that former agency, who was working for an agency in Minnesota. I called him up and I was like, dude, we kind of have an opportunity here. Do you want to come out and try this thing for real with me? So that was really where it started. And it's grown month by month, and it's been a really fantastic adventure.
Awesome, man. I mean, you have an interesting journey compared to, a lot of other creative directors in the industry. You were a creative director before Ragtag, and, you're still young relative to the industry. So how did you land your first creative director role being, such a young creative?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to sound like every one of my professors in college, but it really was a who you know situation. I was working in marketing strategy for the tourism bureau in the city of Colorado Springs, and had gotten to know just a lot of folks through my role there. And I knew this, I knew this guy who owned an agency, and I just was kind of loosely friends with him, and I asked him to get lunch with me one day, and I just totally picked his brain. And I guess I asked some of the right questions because he was following that meeting, was curious about my availability. And it was a loose start, right? It was a team of less than 10, and there wasn't like a lot of forward trajectory. And so it was a risk for me to take that role. And I think that was kind of what got my foot into being a creative director in this industry, was really taking a risk. It was leaving my stable marketing strategy job, and for a really uncertain paycheck that turned out to be very much uncertain. So, that significant risk really was kind of like pouring rocket fuel on my career. And I mean, I was floundering for my first 6 months in that role. I had no idea, and still don't have any idea really. But I think just that kind of trial by fire really sharpened some skills that I just didn't even know needed to be sharpened at that time. So, and a big part of that felt like massive amounts of experience from, seeing what was done well, seeing what, the owners and my peers were doing well, but also a really significant amount of experience was gained for seeing what people were doing really poorly, because that agency wasn't ran, super well, and there's a lot of internal struggle there. And so seeing the pain that the organizational pain that can be a byproduct of poor creative direction and poor management was equally as informative for me.
So Jack, you start Ragtag. Who was your first client, and how did you land that account?
Again, I really feel like I can't give myself too much credit here, because I've just known some really incredible people who've been advocates for what I've been doing here in Colorado Springs. But our first kind of big client was in Q1 of 24, right away, pretty much. It was in like January. And it was a fiber internet provider in Colorado Springs called Underline Internet, based out of Texas, and do work in New York in the Springs. And so they're like kind of medium-sized internet fiber company. And I had one of my really dear friends works in the digital marketing space, and she bought all of their media here in the Springs, and they had kind of a falling out, I guess, with their last creative agency. And so she just threw, my name in the ring, and she's like, "You need to give this guy a call." It ended up being an awesome fit, which was really propelled kind of our start. It really kind of gave us a kickstart, and ended up, we still do work with them. We're on retainer with them, and it's been really sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I've seen the work, dude. I'm a huge fan of the work you're doing with Underline, and it's huge, right? Obviously, getting that first client is a big milestone for any agency, right? What have been some of the other significant milestones that Ragtag has seen in its first year?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll say I think good work continues to develop good work. So like anytime that I feel like we've gotten an opportunity to, punch a little bit above our weight class for a client who maybe is taking a risk on us, and we've done well, that's always just propagated more projects, not only with that client, but, then we're all of a sudden in their circle. And so that was, that Underline was a big one. Another one that was really exciting for us is that company that I'd been working for prior to my creative director role with the Tourism Bureau of Colorado Springs. I was still friends with a lot of those folks, and pretty good friends with the marketing director there. I just, wanted to get coffee with her and sit down, and we just chatted for a while, and kind of started talking about the possibility of like doing work together. And she's like, "Well, I'd love to work with you again. Like we have great chemistry, and we understand each other well and communicate well." And so we started shooting a lot of photos for them and just doing a lot of content creation. It was just like I was all of a sudden in the room with a bunch of these people that I looked up to, both in the marketing industry in Colorado Springs, but also in the tourism industry. And it was just like I was rubbing shoulders peer to peer with all these people that I just had been looking up to for a really long time. And it wasn't because I was doing such like an excellent job. I like to think we did a good job on that project, but it was just because somebody, believed in me, and it just poured rocket fuel onto, our trajectory there. And so, following that, we did another project with the Olympic Museum, and it opened all these doors of connections for us. And so that project alone, and our relationship with Visit Colorado Springs, has been, massively important for us as an agency and growth, but it's also just been so sweet to be connected to their circles.
That's so cool. I'm a big fan of that. So Jack, you've mentioned coffee chats a couple of times already, and I'm interested to know your take on just how important reaching out for those coffee chats is to not only developing an agency, but also developing your career as a creative.
I would say it's been massively helpful. I made it a goal for my first, this is still kind of a loose goal on a weekly basis for me, but for my first 6 months of running Ragtag, I made it a goal of sitting down and having coffee or lunch or a beer with somebody that I didn't know. And, roughly, like, Colorado Springs is a little bit unique in the sense that it's a city that's, I mean, I think it's over 800,000 in the metro, maybe even close to 1 million now, and yet it feels like kind of a small town. It's weird how everyone knows everyone, and so doing that, I think right off the bat was just like a great way of making friends in spaces. And so showing up to those, like, you know, marketing mixers or like whatever, you know, that we show up to is kind of out of obligation, started to become something I'd look forward to because I like actually know people there, and those relationships have you know, helped us grow, whether that's been in, you know, giving us counsel and advice, or connecting us, you know, with folks that we've hired, or connecting us with, you know, leads and so on. So relationships have really been the thing that's kind of propagated growth for us.
Yeah, you know, and while we're on the topic of client relationships, I want to know who's your dream client?
Oh man, that's a great question. We do, I mean, I in all my free time, and kind of even my segue into the creative world was through the outdoor industry. I've, you know, worked in the kind of rock climbing field for a long time. I worked as a guide for a long time, and have kind of worked in the just outdoor industry space as a whole for a long time. And so obviously there's some big names out there. I think recently the North Face had a bid out, and you know, we kind of threw our hat in the ring, and of course, you know, we're a really small fish in that pond. But I think doing work for some organizations who have, you know, environmental strategy and care a lot about their environmental impact, but also that like love to do the things that we love to do. It just, we're able to create such, I feel like we have so much more value to provide a client when we do that thing or buy that thing that they're selling, because we're able to understand it so much more holistically from the client's perspective, from the end client's perspective. And so working with more folks in that space, I think would be my dream.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I can totally see that happening for you guys. And, you know, Ziggy, the designer community, can we make that happen for them? I think we can make that happen. Speaking of community, you know, let's quickly touch on the creative community here, Jack. You know, we talk about, you know, client relationships and dream clients. I'm curious to know, who is a person or an agency that you look at and you go, you know, wow, they're doing some really cool things over there.
There's so many incredible agencies, both here in Colorado, but just nationwide too. I think one that's been really influential for me, and this isn't even a creative or design agency. They're much more on the digital side. But they're a local Colorado Springs agency called Wolf and Key Marketing, and they mostly do digital distribution and ad buying and ad placement and all that kind of stuff, which we don't really touch much of. But Adam Morley is one of the founders of Wolf and Key, and we actually now share an office with them. And he was kind of one of the first folks to really like explain and show me the path forward, and like what it means to build relationships in a community, and how do you build a relationship, or how do you build an agency off of that kind of equity. And that's probably been one of the most like influential you know, pieces of advice and wisdom that I've received over time from anyone, but specifically in the agency world. And I can think of, you know, a ton of agencies that are doing really like kick-ass design work and really creative campaign development. Here in the Springs, there's a really awesome design house called Fixer Studio, and they've just done some beautiful illustrative work and design work. Ours, just like that relational equity piece, I feel like that has been the separating factor in us, is for us is if it's just our work against another agency's work, I'd like to think that our work stands out. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that really does stand out is that ability for us to relate to the clients and build relationships there. I mean, we constantly say we're in the industry of table setting. I have like illustrations of like tables and coat racks and all these like images of hospitality on a lot of our marketing collateral. And we really adopted this idea that we are here to facilitate relationship between you, being our client, and their end client. We want to just set the table, and we use marketing and messaging and creative as a tool to do that. we just want to set the table to start real conversations. And Adam kind of had helped me formulate some of those ideas. So long-winded answer, but there's a lot of folks that have been super inspiring. He's been one of the most.
I love how much you go to bat for your creative peers in Colorado Springs. I think that's really awesome that you're not only, a part of the community there, but you're actively working to support it. I think that's a really sweet mission. And the visualization of table setting, that's very helpful too. I think that's, you guys have a really great value proposition with that when you're, whenever you're pitching. So we've been talking about the industry, and with that in mind, what current trends in the industry excite you? And how do you see them influencing the future of Ragtag?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I think that there's two. I think we're seeing a lot of increased value from user-generated content and campaign development built off of UGC. I think it's such an interesting way to create authority with your audience is by your users being the ones to create content. And so we've started to implement that on the behalf of some of our clients. And it's really exciting to see, like we kind of get that creative ball rolling, but we get to invite other people into that narrative, right? We get to invite our clients into that narrative, and then they get to produce content. So that's been a really fun one to see. It's kind of something that's a little bit out of our hands. Like when we develop strong UGC, at the end of the day, like it's the user who creates that content. It's not us. So that's been a cool one to kind of see grow industry wide, obviously, as social media has become such a significant part of marketing strategy and campaign development. I feel like that one's had a lot of weight. AI has been super interesting to watch. It's taken a lot of busy work out of some of what we do, which is fantastic. I mean, we're trying to get on the train here and be up on what we can, how we can utilize AI. And I think there's so many new tools out there, but it's cool because it can take out some of the parts of our process that take us a lot of time and honestly take us away from the real strategic work that we do and give us more margin to really think about the why before we deliver something and really kind of spend all of our time in this the place that we're actually hired to be, which is that creative strategy.
So we looked at the industry as a whole here, and I want to bring it a little closer to home now. What is your vision for Ragtag in the next few years, and what are your key steps to achieve that vision?
I think so. Right now, Ragtag is owned by myself and my business partner Tommy. We've got a team of we call them our partners. There's 6 partners, not including us, and those are folks. They're technically contract employees who we contract on a really consistent basis, and a lot of times it can feel like full-time work, like they're our full-time employees. I would like though to bring on a few more full-time folks. Just organization. Like what I love about what we do is that we can pull these really excellent creatives into these projects, and then we work on them together. But then there's the days where we're not working on anything, and the ideas that can come out of those like dead spaces can sometimes be so valuable. And so I just like to have a little bit more of a culture around Ragtag aside from Tommy and I. And so we're really hoping to kind of expand the team over the next, we'd like to double in size, as in bringing in 2 full-time folks, and then, a few more of those partnership relationships over the next year. That's been a big goal of ours. Obviously, we would love to, Colorado Springs is kind of a young market. It's a little bit in its infancy as far as the value for the creative arts and marketing services as a whole. Colorado Springs has kind of been owned and operated by the same kind of community for a really long time, and it's created some stale spaces in what we do. There's a few agencies in town who've just not shifted at all with the times, and they know the people, and so they have been creating the content for the people, and we're seeing a shift in that. So we're really trying to optimize kind of our service offerings and our relationships. And we'd love to be kind of the primary marketing strategy, creative development, creative ad campaign development agency here in Colorado Springs. And, I kind of mentioned this to you earlier, Ziggy, but like we kind of started as a full service agency, really trying to do it all. And we had a team that was capable of doing all of the individual functions of what a full service agency does. So design, photo, video, ad campaign development, website. And lately we've just really been trying to refine and hone in our value proposition for our clients to really being, hey, we create ad campaigns specifically with the intention of building relationship between you and your end customer. And so I would like, right now, we're probably in like a 50-50 space right now, where 50% of the projects we do are in that value proposition, and the other 50 are still taking on some, occasional photo contracts and video contracts, things outside of the kind of creative strategy space, much more in the execution space. And I'd like to be in more of like an 80-20 relationship to that, where 80% of our time is spent doing creative strategy and ad campaign development.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see it happen. I've been fortunate enough to meet with a lot of agency owners and agency directors and agency partners. And, a question I always like to ask them, it's the question I'm about to ask you, and it's our final question here. What advice would you give to someone looking to start their own agency, or, is looking to go into business on their own?
I think there's a lot of like preconceived ideas of what we're capable of. I certainly have struggled with this. I remember writing down kind of like a list of some of my career goals in 2021, when I was working for the city. And I was like, I want to start my own thing someday. And I'd made that a 10-year goal. So by the time I was in my mid-30s, I wanted to start my own agency. And what I didn't realize is that was, less than 2 years away at that time. And I think I just really didn't believe I could do it. And I think what I've learned in this whole process is like, when we're under the gun and we've kind of like got to make it happen, we're really capable of a lot. And I really think it comes down to like giving it hell. Like, you just got to try. And through that trying, you're going to learn a lot about what works. And you're also going to learn a ton about what doesn't work. And I'm so grateful that I've kind of been given the opportunity to fail and to try. And it's through that I've started to see some success. And I think there's a lot more failure down the road for me that's going to lead to hopefully more success in that space. But there's something about like this adversity to failure that I've developed in myself that I think I would recommend. Like, you gotta try, and you gotta like build up some tolerance to failure, because it's totally going to happen. You're going to lose some clients. You're going to piss off some clients. You're going to, screw up some deliverables or whatever. And I think that's just like, you got to be able to shake that off a little bit and just keep going for it. And then on top of that, I think I've needed to find voices of wisdom and influence who have done it for longer than me. So I've got a few folks that are kind of informal mentors in my career. And I mentioned Adam. There's a few others. A friend of mine named Mark Holthouse, who's in his late 60s, and I meet at his house once a quarter and go through my books to talk to him about stuff. And just like developing relationships with some people who are in your corner, and who can kind of look at your work and your organizational trajectory and say, this is great, and also this is terrible. But if you're going to really go for it, I think there needs to be some outside voices. Yeah, those are kind of my two main pieces of advice. Are you really just kind of got to take the risk, take a jump, and also find some people to hold you accountable to that jump along the way.
Thanks so much, Jack. Folks, that is Jack Hebert of Ragtag Studio. Thanks so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck in 2025 and beyond. And, coming from someone that, we went to school together, you're really living it up, man. You're living the dream. So, go do it for us, man. Go live it out.
Sweet. Thanks, Icky.
That was my interview with Jack Hebert, creative director of Ragtag Studio. If you're interested in the work that they do, I've left a link to their website in the description below. Be sure to go check them out, go give them some love. That's all I have for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And be sure to give this episode a like, subscribe, and of course share this out. In fact, share this with that entrepreneur in your life. I've been Ziggy the Designer. If there are 2 things you need to know about me, it's that 1, I love design. And 2, I'm very opinionated. I'll talk with y'all later. Bye-bye.